Hi, I've been building a lot of electronics kits lately, mostly things like this that I've bought off of eBay and put together, soldered together. And you notice like on this kit, on this board, it has some controls, and the controls are soldered directly to the board. The controls plus the jacks are directly on the board. So the idea would be you get a project box, and if it fits closely to the board, you can just drill holes and put the controls on the outside of the project box. However, I've run across some kits now where the controls were designed to go off board. And so instead of having them soldered to the board, there's some type of connector that will allow you to run control wires from the control to the printed circuit board. And most of these pins for these connectors turn out to be a standard 2.54 spacing between the pins, 2.54 millimeter spacing between the pins. And that just happens to be the standard for what's called a Dupont connector. And these are pretty common in computers. They look something like this, where the wires are put into a shell, and then the connector can be attached to the circuit board this way. And you see a lot of these in Arduino systems and computer systems in general. So I decided, well, how difficult could it be to crimp one of these connectors and make them custom lengths and custom colors, etc. And I looked on the net, and I discovered there was a tool for doing this, a crimping tool. So each of the wires in one of those connectors has a connector on the end of it that you crimp on, and then you just push the wire into the case, into that shell, and you can make a connector with 1, 2, 3, 5, however many wires you want. So that seemed like a great idea if I could custom make them at home. And there's a number of videos out on the net showing you how to crimp those connectors. And it didn't look that difficult. So I bought the tool and I started crimping, and I must have gone through a dozen connectors, and they were all crimping incorrectly. And there was something wrong with each one of them. So I said, there's got to be something wrong here. And I watched the videos again, and I really couldn't get a good idea. So after burning through I don't know how many connectors, I finally figured out how to get it right, and what you need to look out for, and how to do it 100% perfectly every time. So I'm going to give you my definitive method on how to crimp these Dupont connectors and get a good connection and a good crimp every single time. So I hope this will be useful to you. I'm always looking for feedback in the comments, so feel free, and hope you get something out of this video. Okay, I have the macro lens on the video camera at the moment, and I'm going to try and this is about as far as zoomed in as I can get, so I can show you what the connector looks like in detail. So if we look at the back of the connector, where I'm pointing, you can see that there are a couple of triangular wings. Now these wings, when they're crimped, are intended to hold down the insulation of the wire. And they just have to be a little bit over the insulation. You don't want too much insulation in the connector itself, but just enough to grip the insulation. Now, next on the connector is what holds in the bare wire. And these also get crimped. And they fold over the bare wire, sort of like in a barrel configuration. And so the trick with these Dupont connectors is that both the wings that hold the insulation and the barrel connector are crimped at the same time. And there are two different portions of the crimper that do this crimping, and I'll show you that when we take a look at the crimper. But the wings get seated in one part of the crimper, and the barrel connections get seated in another. And that's really where I think a lot of the explanations on the net have gone wrong, because they don't really give clear instructions on how to seat this connector into the crimper so that both the wings and the barrel connection will get crimped properly. And as we go forward on this connector, now this happens to be a female type connector. So this portion of the connector is what goes into the pin. You can also have a male connector, and it'll be approximately here as well. And then, that, of course, that would fit into a female connector. Now also, point out here, is a little piece that juts out from the female connector, or female portion of the connector. And that's what holds this connector in the shell. And it's really important when you're crimping to make sure that just the portions that are supposed to get crimped are in the crimping tool, and the rest is sticking outside of it, because you don't want to crush this little piece here that holds the connector to the shell, and you don't want to crush any of the connector portion itself. Just the part that holds the wire, the bare wire, and the part that holds the insulation. And I'll try and get this into focus, at least the rear of the connector, so you can get a good look at it. These things are really small in real life, and this is being shot with a macro lens to try and get the most magnification I can. Okay, so that's the connector. What's also really important is when you strip the wire. Here's a one that's stripped. The actual bare wire that you want to be stripped to go into the connector is only about 2 millimeters long. If it's any longer, it's going to extend into the connector portion of the connector, and it's going to obstruct being able to fit over a pin or slide into another female section. I'm trying to get this into focus. It's not that important. Everybody knows what a stripped wire looks like. But the one thing I want to note is that intuitively it looks smaller when you 2 millimeter strip looks smaller than sort of what you would normally use for connecting things. But trust me, this is one of the keys to getting this connection right. And the reason for that is that when you put the wire into the connector, you want the wire to only fit as far as the very edge of the female portion of the connector. If it's any further, it's going to go inside, and you'll be able to crimp, but the connector will have an issue. Okay. Next, we'll move on to take a look at what the crimping tool looks like and how to seat the connector in the crimping tool. Okay, so I'm going to continue to work with the macro lens here, because I want to get you some close-up views of the crimping tool. And I think this is where a lot of the videos that are out there on how to crimp these connectors fall short. You don't really get a close enough view of how they're seating the connector in the tool, and so it leaves a lot of guesswork. So I want to make that very clear, and the only way to really do that is under magnification of the macro lens. I'll give a view of the whole tool when we finish up, but I think if you get this part, you're well on your way to getting these things crimped correctly. So here we're looking at the position in which I have to hold the tool in order to do a crimp. And in my particular tool, which is the SN28B, and purportedly the best tool for doing this crimping, I'm actually holding it backwards and upside down. Now, whatever tool you have, you're going to have to get it in this same position. So it may vary from tool to tool, and I've seen a couple of videos where the tools have to be in the complete opposite configuration from the way I'm holding mine in order to have them equivalent. So you'll see that there's three separate crimpings that this tool can do. I have no idea what the back two are to be used for, but the first one, the smallest one, is the one that's used for crimping the Dupont connectors. And this tool is ratcheted, so it can be moved in steps. It's not continuously variable. But this first slot over here is where you need to seat the connector in order to make the crimp. Now I'm going to open up the jaws of this because I want you to take a look inside of this compartment here and notice a few things about it. So here I'm opening up the tool. And I'll see if I can get it in position so that you can see, so that you can see what's inside. Now over here, where I'm pointing, is where the Dupont connector is going to be crimped. And one of the things I want you to notice is that the interior has basically two portions. The portion that's the lower portion, the one that's immediately in front of you, right here, is the portion that crimps the wings of the connector. And then if you look towards the middle, you'll see a little ridge. So there's a very slight difference in height. It's less than a millimeter. It's probably even 1/10 of a millimeter. And in the back portion of this slot is where the barrel portion of the connector is crimped. So basically you have to get the wings on this side, on the lower side, and the barrel portion on this side, and then sticking out the back will be the rest of the connector. Now that's all well and good, and I'm going to try to give you some views here. I think you can see, if you look at if you look down the slot, you'll see right in the middle of the slot, like right over here. That's where the division is between the section that crimps the wings and the section that crimps the barrel. Now, you'd think it'd be an easy thing to seat it once you know that. Unfortunately, the way you have to put the connector in is not that obvious. It doesn't just slide right down into that slot and boom, and you ratchet it down and make the connection. In actuality, and I'm try to position it here, you have to push the wings very close to the middle of the connector, or very close to the middle of that slot. But unfortunately, the wings don't fit all the way down. They sort of lean on their side. I'm gonna get one in position and show you. It's a little too difficult to aim the camera and then work with the connector and this tool at the same time. So what I'm going to do is do a few seconds off camera to get this connector in the right position, and then I'll show you what's necessary for you to do it yourselves. Okay, so here is one of the most critical things you're going to learn today. I've got the connector positioned in the tool exactly the way you need it prior to crimping. Okay, so notice that I've got the wings facing down in the tool. This is critical. It's absolutely not intuitive in how to use this tool. When I first saw this tool, I said, hey, this bottom part looks like a V, kind of like the wings. I sat the thing in there, crimped away, and said, hey, this is going to be easy. No way. Take a look at the position of this connector in this slot. The wings are in the portion and they're facing down in the lower portion of the slot. The portion of the slot that is slightly lower than the other portion. They're almost up against that midline that I showed you before. And then that naturally places the barrel portion of the connector in the other portion of the slot. And I just want to show you that hanging out of this tool, coming out the other side, this is the female portion of the connector. And yeah, that's the female portion of the connector. And it's hanging completely out of the tool. So it won't get crimped at all. And if you're going to check anything, it's not really necessary. If you get the connector positioned as I've shown it here, and notice that the connector slants a little bit. That's exactly the position that you want to put it in. It doesn't fit exactly as you would expect against the walls of this slot. And so when you ratchet down, and I've ratcheted down two ratchets from fully open, it will hold this connector in place. And it'll hold it well enough for you to be able to get a wire in there and crimp it. So once you've gotten the connector into this critical position, so the wings are facing down, they're almost at the ridge level, and the female portion or the male portion of the connector, whatever you're crimping, is sticking out the other side. And it will naturally be, because if you get those wings towards the middle of the connector, or towards the middle of the slot, the slot's not big enough to crimp the entire connector. So that's the position that you want it in. So the only thing remaining to do is to shove the wire in the right place. And here's where some of the other videos fail you. So I've seen some of the other videos on the net where they say, well, you've got to really check the position of the wire coming out the other side, take a look, make sure it's not touching the female portion of the connector. If you do it this way, and you've got the wire, if you've got the wire cut correctly, you won't have to worry about that. The little bit of motion that this wire will cause the connector to move, it can only move as far as the middle of the slot, and that doesn't matter. That's exactly where you want it. So here I'm going to put the wire and sort of put it in through the top of the slot, and all that's left is for me to close down on the tool, and I've made my crimp. And now here is the result. And try to get that in focus. So you can notice here, I just crimped this from the connector that was sitting in that slot. You can see where the wings have wrapped themselves around the insulation. Right? You can see the barrel connection is closed on the stripped part of the wire. And you can see that the wire is not in the female portion of the connector. And you will get this result every time if you followed those directions. The most important thing is get the tool in the right position, get the connector in the right position in the slot, wings down on the lower portion of the slot. Then ratchet down a couple of times to hold that connector in place. Have the wire stripped only 2 millimeters, and then put the wire in at the top portion of the connector while the connector is being held in that slot, and ratchet down the remaining way. You will get a good connection every time. Okay, so I hope that video was useful and you get the idea behind how to crimp this Dupont connector. So best of luck with that. I know the video was a little shaky. I took a lot of the video using a macro lens, as I said when I was videoing it. That was necessary just because these connectors are so small. There's no way to get the detail that you need without doing that. And so even a very, very tiny motion in a macro video is going to look like my hands are shaking all over the place. And that really wasn't the case. I've seen some shaky videos of people doing stuff in electronics before, and they are annoying. But unfortunately, that was the sort of the trade-off here in trying to show you exactly how to position this connector in the tool versus not being able to get close enough to show the detail. So here is the tool that I've been using. This is available on Amazon and eBay and other places. It's the SN28B, I believe. And the way I've had to hold the tool in order to get this done is, as I said, it's backwards and upside down. But the important thing is to get the slot that you're going to put the connector in into the right position. If you get it in the position that I showed you in the video, then your crimps will be successful. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out is that it's important to get the wires stripped well. And to do that accurately really requires a very good wire cutter, a wire stripper. This is a Klein wire stripper. It's a really good tool. I mean, there are others out there, but basically you can control how much wire you strip, and the tool is spring actuated, so it's a very quick operation and it's foolproof. And it's very easy to use. You just put the wire in, put it in the right gauge slot, and then the wire gets stripped automatically, and then you can trim it from there. And that's what I've been using for all the wires that I've been cutting for crimping. So that wraps it up. I welcome your comments. If something's not clear, I'm willing to revise the video or add some videos on how to do this. But I've been crimping away for one of these projects and successfully made a lot of connectors very quickly once I got the hang of it. So hopefully you will too. And thanks very much for watching.